One of the most common comments I hear about why public transit will never work for them is because some people need a car to go from anywhere to anywhere. I've heard this a ton of times, and even people who are supportive of public transit often suggest that cars do have the edge in versatility. In today's video, we're going to talk about how transit can also go from anywhere to anywhere, but why it might not actually have to. One of the most common complaints about public transit is that people can't use it to go where they want, when they want. I'm going to address both of these arguments in this video and give you some examples you can use the next time someone suggests that because your city has an underwhelming transit system, it could never have a better transit system. The idea that transit doesn't give you the option to travel when you want to is an incredibly common one. To some extent, this is true. You generally cannot instantaneously go from wherever you are now onto the train platform. But that's also true for cars, having to walk through a giant surface parking lot, or descend into a parkade. Get fuel when you're running low, or even just run into traffic are all regular parts of driving that will prevent you from traveling when you want to. The problem is, as a society, we've been trained to blame these problems with driving on not having enough roads and enough parking, whereas we blame problems with transit on the existence of transit itself. The subway or bus doesn't work well, that must mean the subway or bus sucks. We pretend that infrequent transit that forces people to wait is inherent to transit, when transit systems around the world run buses and trains every couple minutes. In a good transit system, your ability to get moving is similar as with a car. When done right, it's a few minutes to get to a station or a stop, and a few minutes you need to wait for a train or other vehicle to come. Just like with driving, where people typically take a couple of minutes to get in their car and get onto the road. But there's a big difference. When you're driving, traffic is basically inevitable, even for cities that have done the right design for cars. Meanwhile, the best transit systems in the world, well, you might get a bit crowded during rush hour, but you're always going to have a pretty consistent travel time and pretty high reliability, especially compared to driving. At the same time, when taking transit, you don't have to worry about gas or actually doing the driving. If you want to hear more comparisons between public transit cities and car cities, I did a video about that up here. But that's only half the argument I addressed at the beginning of this video. The other, arguably bigger problem is that transit just doesn't go everywhere. Look at any transit map and, well, it has an edge. So can you really go wherever you want, or is this a true pitfall of public transit? Well, I think it's helpful to start by considering what anywhere to anywhere even means. When a city or other urban area is being planned, you can choose to co-locate transit and the places people spend time. More important or more frequently visited places should have better, higher capacity transit. Now you might argue this is impinging on your freedom. Lots of people want to own trucks, not because they'll ever use them to haul stuff, but because they might want to use them to haul stuff. And perhaps they even do every couple of years. Similarly, someone might say that the issue with transit is while it might go to most of the places you want to travel to, that one time every 5 years you have to go out into the countryside, it can't do that for you. And that might seem like a convincing argument for why people need to own cars. But the truth is, these places that don't see trains or buses, well, they're accessible to people that don't have a car out front either. But the rational answer, if you just might need to haul something every 5 years, or you just might need to go somewhere where transit access isn't great, is to just rent a car, then do your trip, then return the car and wash your hands of it. Driving and transit do not exist in a vacuum. Humans are the fundamental element of mobility, and a human can get in a car when necessary to make a trip that can only be made by car. On the city level, anywhere to anywhere also needs to be defined. In cities with lots of transit-oriented development like Hong Kong or Vancouver, you basically can go from anywhere to anywhere on transit incredibly easily, because generally all of the places that exist in the city are transit-oriented and thus have transit at them. When your city is that well connected with transit, these small gaps that exist can easily be filled by ride shares, walking, and cycling. And the reality is that walking and cycling have the same special feature that most people associate with driving, which is that you get to choose your route and choose your speed in a way that you can't with, say, a bus. The problem really is car orientation and car dependency, not the fact that cars exist at all. The only reason you really need to go somewhere where there's no transit, cycling, or walking option in a major city is because your city's letting you down. And probably because your city's land use and transit aren't integrated. Otherwise, the places that have stuff would also have transit. Ultimately, this is at the center of the whole anywhere to anywhere question, and it's an attempt to pretend that the American style of designing a city with separate zones of commercial, industrial, and residential space, often separated by miles and only connected by roads, is the natural form of a city. Even in places with lots of suburbs, there are park and rides, cycling paths, and transit services, be it buses in Toronto or trains in Sydney. If your suburb is truly too low density and exurban to support even a basic taxi service, well then you can create a new town and densify it, providing enough density to support other forms of mobility. Ultimately, these are real problems we're talking about, but they're problems with the way cities are planned, not fundamental problems about public transit. Of course, so often problems associated with transit are also just in reality problems with society, and the way we as individuals and collectively approach mobility, along with the intersection with the rampant consumerism that suggests you need to own everything you might ever need. But these things are starting to shift. Car share programs are taking off in cities around the world, and bike share programs are taking off even more quickly. Most people of all political stripes and living in all kinds of different places realize that owning stuff you don't need is a waste of money, and that money could be spent on things that actually bring you joy. In that way, for the majority of the world's population who live in cities, the true freedom is probably by getting on a bike or on a train. Thanks for watching.